Welcome to ALGO. A lot going on with Raj Kotecha. Joining me as always is Vic. Vic, we're big in the game this week, man.
We are big in the game. And guess what? It's episode number 2 without Alex. Could this be a trend,
I
Alex?
know. Sorry, Alex. So let's get the apologies in. Sorry, Alex. We messaged you on the group chat to say that we're going to record tonight, and you've not seen the message. I'm sure you're out and about doing your thing. And also sorry to Sal as well, because I went for I seen him, I think it was last night, and I was like, yeah, we're probably going to do a midweek show tomorrow. Can you jump on and let's talk about some music? But obviously we've started so late. It's the next day now. It's gone midnight. And this all came together a little bit last minute. So we'll get those guys on. We're going to have, we have people from the editorial team coming on every single week. So shout out to everybody on our editorial team. But this week, what we can talk about is this huge viral moment as a Beyoncé clip that we made from last week's show, last Sunday's show, has gone viral and been reposted on our favorite media platform, Earn Your Leisure. We talk about what that experience was like, as well as Sotheby's launching a shoe with Jordan brand dedicated to the greatest of all time, Notorious B.I.G. Well, greatest of all time, interchangeable with Jay-Z, but well, you get my point. Shien is physically coming to Dubai with their cheap goods, and we're going to find out what's going on with their pop-up. We also talk about Justin Bieber coming up on a $200 million bag for selling his music rights, and Apple's charm offensive when it comes to privacy. What does that mean in the short term? What does that mean in the long term? And when the hell am I going to start watching TV so I know who people are when they're in these adverts? And then we've got some cool shout outs and some good content recommendations. Vic, today was a very good show, I would say.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this show. It was a bit of a last minute one. We haven't achieved the shorter episode that we want, but I think we will in episodes to come, and we'll make this one more regular now. Two times a week, I think we'll be able to achieve now on a regular basis for anyone that wants it.
Thanks. Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So big up to everybody who's watching, and one of us is just about to cue the music. Enjoy. All right. Well, let's aim for this high top of the mountain of 2 episodes a week. The thought process here is that we take some of the weight out of the Sunday episodes, because those episodes do tend to run a bit long, and also give you something to listen to midweek as well. Now, there's a strong argument that we shouldn't be changing the formula of the podcast, because we had our all-time biggest podcast moment this week. In the last 24 hours, we've gone viral with it.
Yeah, I know, man. Listen, you are, well, but you specifically, your face has become a viral sensation online, which is in what, 16 years or something making content. It's the first time it's happened at this scale, right?
Yeah, it has. It's the first time. I mean, we'll talk about other kind of comparable moments, because there are like freaky ones, but effectively today I woke up this morning and I saw a little emoji of support by a friend of mine, DJ Remarkable. Shout out to Leon. And I just saw that under a compressed version of the front of a micro clip that we put out from this podcast, where we're talking about the fact that we feel like Beyonce is worth the $24 million that she was allegedly paid for her performance at the Atlantis Royal here in Dubai this past weekend, which set the whole internet on fire. And so obviously when you first open your eyes and you're looking through your phone, you're thinking, okay, this is my friend commenting on my video. This is fine. So, I start scrolling down. I see another comment. I'm like, okay, I guess a couple of people have commented. Maybe it had a little bit of a bump in the night on my Instagram account. And then I kept on going and kept on going. And 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 seconds later, I am still scrolling down, seeing new comments. I'm totally confused. And I'm thinking to myself, who is it that reposted my video on my Instagram about me talking about Beyonce that got that much attention? And it turns out that it wasn't that at all. What happened was that Earn Your Leisure, a media company that we are both in love with, they teach financial literacy to typically people that have less access to it. So people of color, Black and brown people in the USA, predominantly, took the whole video and posted it on their Instagram, where they've got 1.3 million followers. And at the last count, I think it was like 170,000 views since, I guess, this morning, and 5,500 likes, maybe pushing 6,000 last time I checked, and hundreds upon hundreds of comments, a handful of bots. That's all to be expected. But wow, man, what a vibe. I think it was the first time where I've been blindsided because, we do cool stuff every week. The whole point of A Lot Going On, ALGO, this podcast, is just to kind of like share the cool things that happen every week, whether it be people that we meet or situations that we find ourselves in. But this was special, no?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's one of those weird things where, we talk about stuff basically every week, and we got into a rhythm of doing it weekly, and we just share our opinion on stuff that's going on in the world. Now, we know that we have a core and loyal fan base. It's not massive, but we also know that when we're out and about, people come up to us and say, we really like the show. We really like the podcast. We listen every week. We love the insights. We love the insights. And, that gives us a little bit of a boost to keep doing it. But this was something different. And what's really interesting, just to kind of jump forward a little bit, when I saw that post, you shared it on our company group, and I looked down at the comments, I was like, oh, what's going to happen in the comments? That's going to be interesting because, Earn Your Leisure is based out of America. They are, obviously Beyonce mad. And I was just thinking, okay, what are the comments going to be? And they don't, maybe, a lot of them don't know this part of the world very well. So, it's just I'm just curious. And then most of the comments, most of them, there was some that were kind of debating the point, but most of the comments tended to agree, or at least share the enthusiasm for the insight and be like, okay, well, this is cool. This is interesting. Didn't think of it like this. It's a new perspective, or they agreed. So most of them were like really like positive. There was a few that were, debating your position on the price that Dubai paid for Beyonce. But overall, like really positive. So that kind of tells me that, even if this one clip kind of makes it viral, it is interesting to see that there are people around the world that see the perspectives that we put out and agree with them, or at least kind of go, oh well, look, it's given me a new perspective on this topic. So that's really encouraging, actually.
Yeah, it was nice to see that it resonated. Going through the comments, of course, you're always going to get some people that misinterpret, but there was no out and out hate, like F this guy kind of moments. You know what I mean? There was a few people that felt that I was throwing shade because they said that, Beyonce's cheap at 24 million. And that phraseology is kind of difficult to avoid. But why, for clarity in that situation, I don't mean that she's cheap or that she's not valuable. It's just that when you take that fee out of a big macro budget fee, like launching a hotel, that is small compared to if you compare it to a performance fee. So initial impressions when you saw that, what do you think?
Yeah, just that, man. Like, first of all, I was like, I couldn't believe that it happened. But then I was like, wait a minute. When I really thought about it, I just stopped to think about it. I was like, actually, hold on a second. It does make sense because it's really solid insight, and it's a strong perspective, one that I agree with. Number two, it's of the moment. So it's in pop culture. And in the kind of time that we made that podcast, between the show, us making the podcast, and 24 hours later, we saw that a lot of the American kind of news sites like Breakfast Show, the radio shows and everything, had picked up on the Beyonce performance story and were commenting on it as well. And they were commenting on the fee. So I feel like there's definitely like a crossover between the audience of Earn Your Leisure, the audience of these like the Breakfast Club and Ebro and people like that. So then I kind of sort of broke it down. I was like, wait, actually, no, it does make sense that if a massive platform was to pick this up, and for all intents purposes, Earn Your Leisure, albeit a financial literacy platform, it is also a media platform as well, as they've spoken about. So let's just consider it as a media platform that has picked up this story and posted it because they felt like it was worth sharing. And so that's one thing. And then the second thing is of the moment, it's a relevant story. It's the biggest artist in the world. It's, one of the biggest shows kind of one night shows that she's done. So everyone's going to be speaking about it. So I think there was this like small window of opportunity, and with no kind of intent, it just got in there. But deservedly so, I think. Does that make sense? So like it's a media platform that picked it up, a story that's relevant, and a huge story at that as well, with some kind of with a discussion point around the cost of her performance on that night. So yeah, that's my view on it. Like I think it's just a great little moment. I'm still quite I'm in a little bit of disbelief still, but very grateful actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of gratitude, shout out to Fat Man Scoop, who a few weeks ago we spoke about, introduced us to Rashad, one of the co-founders, along with a chap called Troy of Earn Your Leisure. They're a huge media platform. They've got incredible events, A-list celebrities, all talking about money and wealth and insurance and all aspects of financial literacy. For me, one of the things I really liked about this event, this moment, is how people in that Earn Your Leisure audience added on and contributed to the knowledge. One of the people out there was, many people did agree that, yeah, if you take it out of a bigger budget, the performance fee seems acceptable. Other people were saying, like, how long before we see a Dubai residency, the same way you'd have a Vegas residency? How long before you get somebody coming over here and doing a, multiple week type of show? Now, it's slightly different because the domestic market here is not as big. It's not as if people can fly in from the US. Like when you're in the US, you're never more than 7 hours away from going to see somebody. There are people in New York that will fly over to Las Vegas to check out a residency, which is, the same act booked week in, week out, like Usher has been, like Britney has been, Rod Stewart, Boyz II Men. But, could it run the same way? With the kind of venues we've got here and the kind of domestic demand we've got, maybe not, unless we went for like a smaller venue. I think I told you this story about when I went to see Boyz II Men. It wasn't the biggest venue in the world, but you could pretty much imagine that every single week when they perform, it would be totally packed. Do you think it's the beginning of a trend? We spoke about potentially like an annual show coming out of the Atlantis or some sort of like Sun City style of event. But looking at it now, I mean, it looks like this is something that could happen again.
Well, that was exactly my take on the last episode, because you said, it could be like this annual thing where they bring a marquee artist every single year, and the Royal Atlantis could have this kind of moment in time every single year, like bring a Rihanna, bring a Coldplay, bring a Lady Gaga, whoever it might be. But my take was that it could probably be, because it looks like, from all the stuff that I've seen online, that there is an event space there, or at least there could be an event space there. So a monthly event could happen there, and it could just become a go-to, concert venue every single month, and they just bring in a big act. Now, it doesn't have to be like the super, super, super A-listers, but it could be like, A- listers or B+, like, like celebrities that come in and do a monthly event. That was actually my take. I didn't see that comment, but yeah, it's good to see that someone else thought of it as well. And yeah, I actually think that Dubai should do something like that, even if it's not the Royal Atlantis, if it's at a venue or another venue that's created or built. There should be some kind of like monthly event that is always this big artist that comes, because I think that's going to drive more tourism as well, just fundamentally.
Let's take the analogy then, and because if we look at like, if we consider in the US, your maximum travel time domestic market is 7 hours, which is East Coast to West Coast. Let's say worst case scenario, the tip of Miami to Las Vegas, Nevada, right? You got a cut all the way across the country. Well, if we take that map and we impression it on top of the Middle East right now, and then you change the artists, you could potentially have a huge Bollywood act coming to perform at the Atlantis, and you would get wealthy Indians flying 2.5 to 4.5 hours to pull up in Dubai and come and check out those shows. So whether it's like, maybe I'll tell you what they could do. They could reenact all of the songs from a movie. So just take a movie, and let's say that the soundtrack to that movie has, 6 to 10 iconic dance scenes in there. Because for those of you who don't watch Bollywood films like me, but I'm aware of this, is that all Bollywood films effectively are like musicals. to the largest extent, what we call a classic Bollywood film. And so, how many songs would they break out into dance for in a movie, Vic, on average?
I mean, I don't know. I haven't watched a Bollywood movie for a long time, but I think now the kind of format is changing. They're becoming a little bit more Hollywood style. But I mean, I guess, yeah, like there's always going to be an album's worth, like a soundtrack's worth, you know, so maybe anything between 7 and 9 songs, of which probably about two, maybe three are like big breakout records that like come above the line. But just so you know, that a typical performance by a Bollywood star is just that. So back in I want to say that the early 90s and the really, really late 80s and the early 90s, my dad was involved in a lot of those shows across the UK because he knew a lot of the singers that did all the backup singing. So the actors and actresses don't do the singing. They usually have backup singers. And he used to be involved in like organizing these shows and stuff like that. And they come out, they do their big songs with all the dancers and everything like that. And that's actually the Bollywood show when the actor comes or the actress comes and does their show. So that's a real thing. But there are a lot of artists that are backup singer that do the songs for these movies, and they come and do their own concerts with their own songs. So that's a very, very common thing to do. But getting like a Shah Rukh Khan or whatever to do all of his popular songs. Now, Shah Rukh Khan's been in God knows hundreds of movies, I imagine, and has got hundreds of songs that he's well known for. He could come and do one every month and not repeat the same songs probably for a year.
Wow.
Know?
Yeah, and if you look at the
yeah.
fact that like you've got is it the IFA Awards and the Filmy Awards, there's already a lot of like Bollywood based media properties that express themselves through events that are already here in Dubai. And of course, for the wealthy Indians, it's nothing to come over here for a weekend or for a couple of nights to come and be part of some like society event. I guess it's for the sake, it's like the UK marketing industry, mostly based in and around Soho, popping down to Cannes once a year for the advertising festivals and things of that nature. So potentially something that we could see, but very happy about that and very grateful that it happened. To your point there about it being a viral moment, I would say this is a much bigger viral moment than previous ones. But I remember when Gary V put up the One Life video, and there's a scene in it where Gary and I are just talking and laughing back and forth, and I'm in the video for maybe at best 2 to 3 seconds. But that video I've had texted to me a lot since that time happened, where people are like, "Oh, is that you?" So, but and obviously Gary's on a bigger scale, but it's a smaller video, and this is a bigger video on a smaller scale. But yeah, I mean, I kind of got the teaspoon version of it before, but I must say today's just been incredible, man. Like, I mean, we've had a super busy day. We were shooting today and things of that nature, but yeah, man, it's been a real vibe. So we don't engineer these moments to happen. If it happens again, then we'll be super happy. But yeah, big up to Earn Your Leisure. And for me as well, it's so nice that we were on record many weeks ago saying about how passionate we are about this platform. So to be on a platform that we regard as the emerging platform when it comes to business content, it's just been a huge privilege. Now, looking at the other stories of today, it looks like there is another big music story right on the heels of a very similar story just a few weeks ago, which is that Justin Bieber has sold rights to his music for $200 million. Have you had a chance to look over this?
Yeah, so he is selling rights to 291 songs that he's released or had interest in up until the end of 2021. So not the last kind of year. So up until 2021, which is basically when all of his biggest hits have been anyway. So he sold to this group called, I'm going to get it, Hypnosis Songs Capital, who's backed by private equity firm Blackstone. I think they've picked up a few catalogs along the way. So this is on the heels of, Dr. Dre making the same announcement or similar announcement, and a whole host of artists that are doing the same. Not like Justin Bieber, because Justin Bieber's young. We're talking typically like, you're much more kind of classic artists that have sold their catalogs. I mean, people like Shakira's sold, Stevie Nicks, Bob Dylan, So Fleetwood Mac, Neil Young, Phil Collins, and Genesis, the Beach Boys. So a lot of these like legacy artists are selling off their catalogs to various companies, mostly private equity. So I think this is an interesting that's happening in the music industry, and I think there's a couple of reasons why I think this is happening. Number one, Justin Bieber's a bit of an anomaly because he's young. He's only like whatever, like 30 or something like that, right?
28.
But a lot of these like 20, 28, okay, cool. So then a lot of these older artists, that are selling off their catalogs, first of all, I think, they've got to look at their relevance, right? So not all of them are relevant. Not all of them are going to be making new music that's going to resonate with a wide and large fan base that then they can monetize on, whether it be, in the form of a concert or streaming or selling records or whatever it might be. So this is a good opportunity for them to go, okay, let's cash out on all of our hard work over the last 20, 30, 40, however many years. There's another thing as well. And I was reading up about this. Now, I don't know a lot about this specifically. And if anyone does know more, I'd love to kind of get a bit more insight. But there is this new tax law that the US government has. Is a one of Joe Biden's tax plans, where it's altering the US capital gains tax. So it falls in line with income tax for any asset sale over $1 million. So what that means is that it increases the rate of tax on the sale of an asset from around 20% to 37% for high earners. So before that tax change happens, I think a lot of these guys are selling off because they obviously don't want to pay 17% more in capital gains tax for selling off the rights, for selling off their music if they choose to sell it after this happens. But also any money that they earn from streaming or record sales or whatever it might be that fall above that rate also then exposes them to that capital gains. So even if it drips out over the long term, they'll be one of the higher earners and they'll get the high capital gains. So this is a good opportunity to go, okay, well, look, we're not as relevant as we used to. We're not as relevant as we used to be. We're not going to get the same kind of return from our work. So we may as well, if we've got an offer, we may as well sell it off, even if it's 100 million, 200 million, whatever it might be. That's a great windfall at the end of your career when you go into your kind of twilight years. So it's an interesting thing that's happening, and it's going to continue to happen. I can't see it slowing down because there's so many legacy artists. And if Justin Bieber at 28 has done it, and the way obviously he structured the deal is a limited period of time, right, up until 2021. So anything he makes thereafter is going to be his until he chooses to maybe do a deal like this again. But frankly speaking, $200 million, we spoke about the 24 million for Beyonce being cheap. I think that's a steal, man. Like Justin Bieber's 28, he's going to be relevant for another 20 or 30 years, particularly as his audience grows with him. They're going to keep listening to these classic records or that they consider classic. And I think that's a steal, man. $200 million.
Let me give you some takes that I found on Twitter by this really smart chap called Dan Runcie. So his Twitter is at RUNCIEDAN. So a couple of points that he made. I don't want to nick all of them here, but I just feel like he's made some really good points that are worth us debating. Number one is that he said that, he's only 28. He has a full career ahead of him. Effectively, I would look at that and say, you know what, it's 291 songs. There's a lot of songs, right? Fair. But, he could probably come up with another, from now until his mid 50s, another 30 to 40 hits. It's possible. But the really great point that he made here is that he said that his Justin Bieber as an artist today, he has a different, what's called a decay curve. And it's less predictable than the decay curve of an artist from the 90s or early 2000s. He said, how many streams will Sorry still get in 2033? It's hard to know for certain. So I agree with you, Vic. It's always going to be a great record. But is it the kind of record that, it might be the kind of record that, let's say like your son at 9 years old will always hold close to his heart, because the same way that we would when we heard records when we were very young. But even Sorry is an old record, relatively speaking, for even a 9-year-old today. But he talked about this decay curve. And also, this was quite interesting as well. He said that there are some sources in the industry saying that he needs liquidity. So he's cancelled and postponed a lot of tours, not just due to COVID. His stadium tour was downgraded to arenas due to low ticket sales, and others were cancelled for health reasons. And on that health reasons issue, he himself does have a specific health issue. It's called Ramsey Hunt syndrome. This is another chap that jumped in. His name is Jared Tingle, Jared V Tingle on Twitter. And he said that he's got this kind of partial facial paralysis, and it seems unlikely that you can get back to 100%. And so it might be worthwhile exiting on at least what's been created thus far from now. Now, before I just pass back to you on that one, my other 2 cents on that as well is that there's a couple of macroeconomic things at play here. Number one is, when you look at all of the revenue opportunities that are available in the world today, we're kind of at the bottom of the market. Like, you're starting to see Bitcoin going up now. You're starting to see Microsoft going up. Like, we're starting to see the direction go from generally down to generally up. And it might be the case that when we do look back at this quote unquote recession, that it wouldn't have landed very hard. It might be a softer landing at the bottom and a wider curve coming back up again. So if the banks and the bonds are offering you 5-10% per year on your money, then now's a really good time to have liquidity, whether you're using it because you just generally want the money because you want to make up money that you would have made on tour that you didn't get, or you just want to start deploying cash into the markets. You know what I mean? You want to buy the bottom of real estate. You want to buy the bottom of stocks and bonds and equities. That could be one thing. Secondly, speaking of the other side of that transaction, when it comes to equities and traders and people like that, I think when you look at the deduction in growth tech and the fact that Tesla may never go back up to 500 and, things of that nature, if you're looking for growth now, you're going to go for more conservative growth. And so it's private equity companies that are buying these assets that could be putting those money into government bonds or other parts of the market. But what they're doing is they're betting on something from the past that they know that works rather than the future. So they're not going to put their money into risk assets like Web3 and the future of this and the future of that. They're like, you know what? That's kind of like a little bit speculative and we can't afford to do that based on the market we're in. But what we do know is that for the first time ever, a music catalog has almost like a follow-on guarantee, which is that it will always live on Spotify. Whereas before, with publishing and performance, if radio decided to stop playing it, that's a wrap. As you can see with people like R. Kelly, radio and all these institutions might choose to stop playing it, but as long as it lives on the streaming platforms, it's always going to generate a certain number of spins. And so now there is a continuation plan for catalog that there wasn't 15 years ago. So I think I agree with you. We're going to see more of it. You can grab any of those points and run with it. I'd be interested to know what you think.
No, so the liquidity issue, I think, is really critical here, because particularly for as I said, it's happening a lot with the legacy artists, like the older artists. Why would they hang on? Let's just, without being too crass, there's less years in front of them than there are behind, right? So why would they hold on to something that has like potential future revenue when they can cash grab now and be liquid now? And that could be whether they want to pass it down to generations or whatever it might be. That's up to them. But that liquidity issue, I think, is really, really important for those artists in particular, but even for Justin Bieber. I forgot completely about his paralysis. He cancelled a bunch of shows because of his face being all messed up because of this disease he has. So that's an interesting thing. There's a report by this company, Hypnosis. I can't even say it properly, but they've done an investor report. But just the high level one is that they are paying artists and songwriters an average multiple of 14.76 times historic annual income.
Jesus Christ.
Right, exactly, right. So it's significant, but again, the point of that being, again, just to echo what you said, is about historic annual income, which is a good indicator of future income, particularly when you look at the lifetime accessibility of this music on streaming platforms, and will continue to be accessible. Plus, it's not just about streaming, right? It's about licensing, tours, and anything else that kind of comes off the back of it. So they're obviously
Tours.
looking.
I don't know about tours. Do you know about tours? Like, would he have to pay a performance fee back to the license holder? And don't forget, he's only selling his portion. So interesting about this point about multiples. Do you think, because other people own access to those rights, right? Like I'm sure Universal has a chunk of it. I'm sure Def Jam has a chunk of it. So do you think that by him selling his shares on or his rights over his rights, like the portion of his rights that he owns, that if he gets a 14x multiple and that comes to 200 million, straight away that sets a base price for anybody else who owns part of those rights who wants to exit? So if you and I both own something and I sell my part for 200 million, well, next, if you've got the same as me, you're going to want to sell it for at least 200 million because that's what's left. Or you're going to want to sell it for more because I've bumped the price up. So who knows if these artists, and I mean, it's Justin and Dr. Dre, they're both, close in with Universal and Jimmy Iovine and all that. Maybe what happens is the artists sell their portion of their rights. And then next up, the institutions that own the rights then make exits for higher multiples and even higher valuations. And that's how these things transition from active IP, which is being managed by record labels, into almost like passive IP, which is ran by financial institutions.
That's a very interesting. Yeah, I didn't even think of that, because when you just kind of read it and you're like, oh, they've just sold the rights to their music. Well, it's not the rights to their music, because there's no one that really, I don't think there's any artist that owns 100% of their music, right? Because like you quite rightly said, there's record labels, there's distribution, there's writers, there's producers, there's engineers, there's a whole gang of people in that pie, right? So that portion of their portion of the pie. So you imagine, right? So if he sold for 200 million, the value of the entire catalog could be the actual value of the entire catalog based on using 200 million as a benchmark number or a minimum number, could be 4, 5, 6 times the value. Like the value of those 291 songs could actually be in excess of $1 billion.
Well, no, let's go the other way. Let's take that 200 million, and 200 million was his exit price on a multiple of what, 14.1 you said?
14.76.
14.76. So 200 million has been beefed up by 14.76. So yeah, let's divide it by 14.76. That means that today in his pocket, that is worth $13,550,000. So that's what it's worth today.
No, as in, yeah, that's what it's worth today, and they've paid the multiple on it. Yeah,
yeah. So they've paid. Effectively, they're giving him the next 15 years of his revenue based on previous revenue. They're giving him 15 years worth of revenue up front. That's what the multiple there means, 14.7. So effectively, he had an asset that was worth 13 million in his pocket right now, and he figured he'd be better to exit that at 200 million right now and then do what he can do with that. Dead simple.
Because you're quite right. You don't, that decay, what do they call it? Like the decay curve. That's a really good, that's a really interesting perspective, because the fact that there's more and more music coming online, which means there's more competition, it's a crowded space. We know that songs aren't streamed as much as we used to listen to individual songs in the past, because there's too much music and it's too accessible. So they get lost in the mix. So that record, using that as an example, yeah, it will still be played for years to come, but will it be played at this multiple is effectively the point, right? So that's an interesting point. Yeah. So I think you'll probably end up seeing, if it's a case that he's only sold his portion of the rights, you'll probably see some of these other guys doing the same. Because why not? If they've got a multiple of 15, just call it 15 for round numbers, then that's better, because then you can take that money, invest it in something now, and probably multiply that more than 15 times in the next 10 years, with another artist or other ventures or other investments or whatever it might be.
Yep.
So
But bird in the hand moves, man. Bird in the hand moves. It's
bird in
looking
the
like it's
hand.
some reliable money opportunities there. All right, so we got a couple more stories we want to get into. You got excited about this. Bit of Dubai news. Shien, the popular Chinese fast fashion manufacturer, not one that I'm down with, but I know that they've got a huge following. And one, because of pricing, secondly, because of like some really interesting clothes that they put out. It is coming to Dubai. It's going to be here for a pop-up 27th, 28th, 29th of January, in line with Dubai Shopping Festival. And when it comes to Chinese New Year, which is around now anyway, the 22nd, so around that kind of vibe, China opening up, tourism kicking off again. It looks like an interesting overlap Venn diagram, man, for Shein. So they'll be here for 3 days, pop up, a chance to physically buy the products. And also Shein's going to be offering like site-wide discounts for anybody choosing to buy in that time. What is this? Is this an activation? Is this a chance to get closer to the market? Are they slipstreaming in with Chinese New Year? Are they slipstreaming in with Chinese tourists going overseas again? I mean, a little from all the columns. What do you think? Because Shayla, your wife, is a Shein customer.
Yeah, she's a big Shein customer because the fashion is, like let's keep it all the way real. The fashion is really good, particularly for women. I don't buy from there. It's very, 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 very affordable, like really affordable, to the point where like you could, and this is frivolous things to do, but in theory, you could buy something online and not return it because it doesn't fit you and give it away to somebody because it's so cheap. And, it arrives within like a week or something like that. So shipping times aren't that bad. But, the interesting thing about this, I think the Chinese New Year, maybe it's a coincidence, maybe it's in line. I think it's more to do with like Dubai Shopping Festival more than the Chinese New Year. I think they're trying to penetrate this market more. They've probably looked at the data and they've probably gone, there's a lot of people from Dubai buying, because I know when people go to Shayla, oh, where did you get that outfit from? She's really honest. She goes, I got it from Shein. And other like girls are like, oh, I shop there too. I shop there too. I shop there too. So I hear it a lot, and it's a small sample size, but I think that's indicative of, the penetration that Shein has in the Middle East and in particular Dubai. So I think they're kind of coming here to test the market. And I wouldn't be surprised if they have a store here or a semi-permanent pop-up or a kind of monthly pop-up or something along those sort of lines. With regards to China opening up, if I'm not mistaken, Shein don't ship in China. So I'm not sure there's a correlation.
That's a very good point. It's not as if because customers coming over here are bringing their brand loyalty to the brand with them. No, you're right. Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah.
What we do know is that Chinatown is opening up in Dubai Mall. And if you go outside Southridge Apartments here in downtown, the park outside, they have like a Chinese festival where all the kids play. And typically the boulevard tends to get kind of red this time of the year as well. So yeah, it looks like the city is pro-China, but you're right. I think we can probably eliminate that unless, I don't know, unless Shein is just part of pop culture as a successful business that exports and has caught the eyes and minds and wallets of consumers overseas, the same way that maybe a TikTok has, because TikTok doesn't trade under TikTok in China, has another name. And I don't know, maybe they've got some Chinese pride and they look at what TikTok's doing overseas, the same way they look at what Shein's doing overseas, and it's just a nice thing. But you're right, it's probably not the driver because they've not got a customer base that buys from them.
Yeah, I simply think, I mean, without overthinking it, I just think that the main drive is the fact that there's a lot of customers here and they're probably just coming to test the market. And it's just a great time to do it. It's high tourist season. Look, there's another thing. A lot of tourists here in January, February, because, the weather's great and people come over. So maybe they're even like looking at Dubai as a market for not just Dubai, but the tourists that come here. So like that customer acquisition from other markets, but using Dubai as a central hub for customer acquisition or customer awareness, at least. Does that make sense? So possibly is that as well. The only thing I would say is, in a notice, but it's in a bit of a weird part of town. It's in like Mirdif city centre. Now, Mirdif city centre as a shopping centre is really great. It's beautiful. It's clean. It's got every shop in there that you want, but it's quite far out of town. You know, it's like 20, 25 minutes from downtown, which, as we know in Dubai, is like driving 3 hours. No one drives that far to go to a shopping mall, you know? So it's chosen a weird location, in my opinion, but, you know, it could work.
Maybe so that's interesting as well, because when you look at Mirdif and you look at the kind of people that work around there, it is kind of like people that are transitioning into like the working or like new middle classes, young families and stuff like that. Maybe the kind of customer they've got is not, or the one that they're aiming to scale through is not the early adopters like Shayla that's knows how to spot a deal, but then ends up wearing her clothes in and around the neighborhood that you live, which is an affluent neighborhood. Or maybe they'd rather have people in Mirdif where the price points may be more appropriate to what their economic opportunity is as a customer up there, because they're probably going to be earning lower salaries, but having a Shien to buy from could give them access to, you know, nicer clothes. Yeah. So maybe them getting the north of the city, Sharjah, folks up there could be a good market for them. And I fully agree. Like if you imagine people coming in for the shopping festival, maybe they're coming in from Abu Dhabi, Lebanon, Qatar, who knows what else. And it could be a chance for them to make some impressions with the brand. I think you said, or I saw on the family group chat, that there might be a chance that you guys head up there. So when you do, we've got to put that in as an out and about in Dubai. I'd love to hear it and for you to shoot some content up there on your phone so we can see what going on with that.
When Shayla's traveling at the moment, and there is no doubt in my mind that she'll want to go and visit. So I think we'll end up doing a little trip up there. And you know, Mirdif is the place where that has the indoor what's that thing where it's like the zero gravity thing where you're in that suit, that space suit, and you're like the wind turbines from below. It's called zero gravity or something like that. It's got that there as well. So we'll probably just go and do that and Shien.
That's indoor skydiving, right? Zero gravity is where that guy was cracking one off in the swimming pool. That's quite different.
Sorry, it's indoor skydiving. That's the one.
So we might go there as a family.
Yeah. What is zero gravity? Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Take our cameras with us.
Stay out the pool. Okay, good. Well, that's that covered up. It's interesting. Let's keep an eye on Shien. Let's see what their relationship with the Dubai is like. What else? Speaking of China, TikTok cracking down on remote work. Where are they cracking down on remote work? I know we saw something in the group chat. But let's get the story.
I think it's in the States.
Is it in the States? Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on a second, because
nice.
For some reason, my
reading on fortune.com. I can read it out to you if you wish. Oh, damn, fortune.com is behind the paywall. Let me go ahead and get another story. So let's look at on the Observer. The Observer surely doesn't have the balls to put this behind the paywall. Okay. Let's leave this. Oh God, every news site right now, man. Observer does it in a real crass way because they literally just cut out words. Okay, let's go with the information. If you call yourself the information, surely you got to give people the information. Nope, that's all behind the paywall as well. All right, you know what? We might start having an anti-paywall policy right now. Insider kept it real for us. Okay, boom. Let's have a quick look at this story. They've done these beautiful bullet points at the top. TikTok is requiring employees to move back to their assigned offices. The information reported on Monday. The company is threatening employees who fail to move with a potential disciplinary action. The move is part of TikTok's broader crackdown on remote work. Tech companies are going through a real tough time right now. Elon Musk has given everybody permission to fire staff. We're talking about 6 to 20% of your staff. Valuations are down. I think TikTok wants to get ahead of the puck on this one and really make sure that they don't create too much complacency, and they want to get people back in the office. And hey, man, if you work for TikTok, I suggest you pay attention.
So it's interesting because, you know, during the lockdown, I think everyone's got excited, right? Like tech companies, people, individuals, and there's this like whole thing around, you know, companies going, oh yeah, you can work from home, and we figured out the systems and everyone can work from home. And then there was people that are like, I don't need a job. I can do remote work and I can do the gig economy, and everyone just got excited. Now the reality is hitting, like a year and some change later. the real reality is hitting, because when we talk about financial crisis, we talk about job cuts, we talk about inflation, interest rates, all of these things have an effect on individuals and on businesses. And businesses, just taking TikTok and all these companies as an example, they've got to do what they need to do to survive. So if it means getting their staff back into work, well, then that's what they have to do. And if the staff don't want to go into work, well, then go and get another job. I feel quite strongly about this, because I'm quite a believer in, I'm a very big believer in like if you've chosen a certain path in your career, whatever that path dictates that you need to do to succeed. And if it's part of a larger organization and a bigger company that is saying to you, all right, well, you had some fun times, now we all need to like band together and work in the office because we need more out of you, well, then you got to go and do it. So, I think that's just par for the course, man. Like, I don't, it's just what it is. Do you know what I mean?
I think what's interesting here as well is that not only are we going to see, I just kicked my camera. Sorry, guys. Not only are we going to see like the downward movement of some of these tech companies, but at the same time as well, what's happened recently as well is there's a little bit of upward pressure, like in terms of like, let me just look at Microsoft share price, because I think they might have just had at least a decent little bit of performance recently. So they're down 0.1% today. But if we look at the last month, it's been a bit of an up and down, to be honest. They've been as low as 222 in the last month. They're now at 241. But Netflix, on the other hand, let's have a look at Netflix. Netflix in the last 30 days has been as low as $276 a share. Now they're at 364, which is a huge swing if you had money in Netflix, especially if you bought towards the bottom. So what you don't want to do is be in an environment whereby you've got the threat of people cutting back on costs. And then occasionally you're going to see tech companies get their head back above water again. And so it basically just means a lot of turbulence. It means a lot of turbulence in the market. If you can buy in at the bottom, or you can short some of these stocks at the right time, you're going to do super well. Also, this just popped up on my screen as well. So whilst I was doing it, specifically about India, IndiaToday.in says that they're now going to be they're going to be phasing out password sharing in India. So good luck trying to get the cheapest people on the planet that have about 4 surnames between them to do that. And all the technological information about like mocking up IP addresses and people sharing devices. I don't know how this is going to work out. Netflix charges $3 for people who wish to use their friend's Netflix account. I don't know if I'm going to read this whole story, but I don't know. Anything to do with Indians and trying to get them to spend money, we should just do dedicated podcasts on.
You think that they don't know how to get around it as well? Like, they'll just call up all their buddies and they'll just figure it out. You know what I mean? So,
they're going to call up their friends who work at Netflix, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what's going to happen. But you know what's interesting about this whole thing is that I think that a lot of people complain about having to go back to the office and stuff because, again, they got comfortable working from home and stuff. But look, here's the reality of it. You and I work from home, and we have done for some time. We've not had a dedicated office space for a number of years. And it is nice when we go to our clients' offices and work from their offices, because then you're around people and the kind of exchange of ideas and just that kind of chocolates. Yeah, exactly that. And that relationship building is effectively it's you can't really put a price on it, particularly in the creative space like we're in. You're kind of thinking about overhearing things and getting ideas and just developing ideas quickly and getting decisions quickly. So I think for anyone that is asked to go back to the office, I'd look at it as a positive thing. You get out, you get around, you're more social around your work colleagues and stuff like that. And not only that, you're probably going to be able to progress further in your career because you're around the people and you can develop yourself more. You can contribute more. You can, suck up to the boss more if that's what you want to do. But I think I don't think it's a bad thing. If that's your environment, if that's your job, then you should take it with open arms, in my opinion. Now, I don't know who's complaining, but I feel like there'll be a lot of backlash because there has been over the last year when companies have asked to get staff back in the office, So
Interesting times in the tech world. Let's jump into a last story then, which is another tech campaign, but a bit more of a charm offensive, really, which is Apple have just released a new video called A Day in the Life of an Average Person's Data. So it's kind of like a short film, about 5 minutes plus change, I believe. And it follows a guy. I think the character's name is Nick Mohammed. Have you seen it, Vic?
yeah, so Nick Mohammed is actually a British comedian.
Oh, is he actually a
And
real person?
yeah, no, yeah, he's a real guy. He's a
Oh,
real
I had no
celebrity in the
idea.
UK. Yeah, he's not like massive, but he's well known. He does like stand-up comedy. He's on like these like certain panel shows. He's in like TV, he's in like movies. He's
Oh,
you know what he's
wow.
in? He's one of the I think he's like a second or third character in a show called Intelligence, which I don't think is on anymore. It was, Ross from Friends. It
Yeah.
was an Apple TV show,
David
and it
Schwimmer.
had him as the David Schwimmer was like the main character, main actor, and I think this guy Nick was the second or the third character. He's in Ted Lasso. He's got like a bit part in The Martian. Like he's just does his thing. So he's a
Mm.
well-known guy in the UK. Yeah.
It's weird because, like, firstly, I thought the character was a bit stupid that he plays in the Apple thing because it's just another Alan Partridge, uh, David Brent, delusion of grandeur, no self awareness kind of like character that just fumbles around thinking that he's more famous than he is. So we've seen that character before, but what was interesting is I didn't know Nick Mohammed was a real person. So and a real dude with a real acting career. Because one thing that I thought, which was funny, is that I was like, this character is so stupid that they built for Nick Mohammed. Yet whichever this random brown actor is that's playing quote unquote Nick Mohammed, he's actually really good at acting. Like he's got a real nice warmth and presence around him. I was like, why is this idiot doing a Apple TV advert when he could probably actually go out there and become a real TV star? So yeah, this is a big teachable moment for me. So yeah, big up to Nick Mohammed then. I guess if he's a real person, a real actor, we might even end up bumping into the guy at some point. You never know.
Yeah, so his character, from what I've seen on TV, is this like the delusions of grandeur thing. I think is just a character that he's hammed up for this particular campaign.
Mm.
But he is a bit of a kind of, like just a bit of a geeky, like nerdy kind of character when he comes across on TV. Just a little bit kind of squeaky, and like just a
Mm.
just a nice guy, but just a bit like weird and a bit geeky and a bit nerdy. And that's how he comes across. And also something that I noticed on the end of the campaign, the YouTube video, T-Mobile. Have you noticed the T-Mobile logo flashes up?
Mm.
So
Mm.
T-Mobile is a carrier, is a like a cell phone, mobile network in the UK, one of the most prominent ones. So maybe there's like a conjunction there, and that's why they've used a British actor and all that kind of stuff. So this seems to be targeted to the British audience. But I don't know much about iPhones. I'm an Android user. Do you use any of this privacy stuff? Does it bother you? Because it doesn't bother me because there's no privacy anyway. And
Well,
you can't turn it off 100%, in my opinion. So,
yeah, look,
you know,
it's one of those things that the privacy thing is its own discussion because now privacy is becoming culturally relevant, is becoming a consumer topic, the kind of things that the average person in the pub might discuss. Now, in terms of Apple's recent history with privacy, the biggest change that they've made is that they've actually given you the opportunity at an operating system level, which is the software that runs your phone. They've given you an operating system opportunity here to prevent certain apps actually even acquiring usage data. A typical example would be allowing an app to track where you are physically and what other apps you're on and just general data usage about your phone, which websites you visit, so that they can transfer tracking software between these places so that they can offer you more efficient adverts. This tracking software is called a cookie. It's like a little stamp. So what happens in that situation is if at the operating system level, you can prevent certain apps from gathering data on you, Well, then that makes those apps kind of vulnerable because a lot of these apps, especially apps that are ran with adverts, they rely on that data. And without having that data, it makes their whole business model and their whole feasibility become a lot more tricky. The biggest example of this would be Facebook, that has so much of your information about your social network and literally your social groups and people that you're friends with. All they need is that high quality data about, like, how you're using your phone, where you are, who you're next to. Those are the bits and pieces. And now that you can switch that off, as you've seen, it's kind of sent Facebook's whole business into turmoil when it comes to the effectiveness of their ad platform. So that's at a high level. That's kind of like the recent history with it. What I thought was very interesting, and I thought this is where you were going to go, is that they have the outward slogan, which I actually took a picture of. It's so funny you should say that. And this is the crazy thing about this podcast, is that I actually made a video of the end of this. So this is what the video I took at the end of it, Vic. Anybody watching on, you won't be able to see it, but it says privacy, that's iPhone, T-Mobile, and then look, there's the Apple logo that locks. Did you see the Apple logo that locks?
Yeah.
So I think what's going to happen is you've now got Apple. They're now going to make privacy one of their paradigms. Why are they going to make it one of their paradigms? Well, they want to actually now start putting technology on your face. They're launching wearables and AR. So if they're going to be collecting more data about you, one of the messages they want to put out into the market is the data that we currently have about you, we respect a lot, and we are gatekeepers to apps that live on our app store, and we are gatekeepers to make sure that they are not A, getting your data, and B, abusing it. So that's why Apple's stance on privacy is where it is, because once they've proven to you that the 2023 mix of services that they have, which is watches, tablets, MacBooks, iPhones, that they're going to be keeping that data private and they respect it a lot, then they can extend the number of devices or the capabilities of those devices and the data sets they can gather, and they can continue to communicate that privacy into that. So examples of this would be the new versions of the Apple Watch and how much data they can get about you, retina scanning when you wear an AR device on your eyes, even, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, AirPods' ability to check your heart rate, because you can actually get data from your ears. So Apple is on an upward trajectory to collect more data about you, whether you like it or not, if you choose to still be an Apple customer. So now they're signaling that, trust us, even though we're about to get more data on you in the next 10 years, if we respect it now, we're going to continue to respect it in the future. That would be my 2 cents.
So they're basically saying that we're going to keep, like, it's almost like, if I'm not mistaking what I'm understanding, they're basically saying, we're going to make sure that the apps that you use on our phone don't collect the data that you don't want them to collect. And you have the choice to opt out of giving them that data. But in exchange, you keep giving us your data.
Well, remember, the high level communications paradigm here is privacy. So what they're trying to say is, if you continue to go deeper into the Apple ecosystem, think Apple, think privacy. Think anybody who sells something that competes with us as not private. So that's what you're buying. You're buying privacy and you're buying discretion, because you're going to use more and more of their tools to consume, to take in the world around you, to access the internet. The internet's only going to become more and more sophisticated, as you've seen. The new MacBooks have now got like 6E or the latest version of Wi-Fi on them. So, you're going to be exchanging more and more data with the Internet of Things and the internet period. And Apple's saying, like, look, Apple means private. If you buy with us, whatever you do with us, just know that privacy is baked into every single product and every single service and every single gatekeeping aspect of our relationship with your life. We're private, we're private, we're private. So at the same time, over the next few years, they'll get more things that will have more data on you. They're trying to establish their privacy. Like, you know what I mean? It's almost like freedom of speech in the US, right? Like, no matter what you do in the US, you've almost got this constitutional right to bear arms, or constitutional right for freedom of speech. What Apple is doing is Apple is positioning privacy as a constitutional obligation of them to their consumer.
Fair enough. I guess that's only going to help them, because
take that, earn your leisure. That's Bobby Viral Tino part 2. Yeah, I'm going to text that to Rashad and be like, "That's how you do it." Yeah. Bobby Viral Tino. That's the name of the episode.
Cool. So, do you want to cover any more of these news stories? There is one that I just wanted to kind of give a
Yeah,
bit of an
please.
honourable sort of mention to. Um, Sotheby's, which is the big kind of auction house, that's very famous for auctioning off like loads of famous art pieces and stuff, has collabed with the Jordan brand and has announced a Notorious B.I.G. Air Jordan 13. Now, there's only 23 of these created, and they are being auctioned off with all the proceeds going towards the Christopher Wallace Memorial Fund. Have you seen the shoe? What do you think?
I just pulled it up. I mean, I think Jordans are stupid. I've never liked them. I think they look rubbish. Like Bal on our editorial team, I think he likes them. I think Sal likes them. I'm sure many people like them, but I don't know. I think they're stupid. It's a stupid shape of a shoe. I'm just going to run the Instagram advert here now and see what it looks like. Okay, so oh, it's very loud. I wish I could mute it. Okay, because it's coming in very loud. But basically, what it is it's the Notorious Big's official Instagram account with the Jumpman 23 account. It's the crown that Biggie famously wore on that kind of like King of New York shot. I wore the replica for that crown at Soul DXB. Shout out to them, and it's got the Jordan logo as a red dot in one of the parts of that crown. I don't know. I really don't care for Jordans. I don't care for these kind of high top shoes. If it's high top for me, it was Timberlands when I wore them. But in general, the color scheme is nice. The materials look good. I think we need a real Jordan lover to weigh on and if they're good or not compared to other Jordans. Nah, they look terrible, man. The way those laces
Yeah.
are and the way that they fit on the inside of the shoe, like those Nikes that people wear in the hood, like the Roadman. Like these look like the kind of shoes that when someone's about to like rob you. Oh, but the stitching of his face in there is pretty nice. And the Christopher Wallace in the foundation tag is beautiful. But yeah, I mean, listen,
Yeah. So
if I never wear Jordans in my sneaker wearing life and career, then I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? What do you think?
yeah, I'm not a Jordan wearer. I'm not mad at them. They're just not the shoe that I wear. These ones are ugly as far as I'm concerned. I don't like the look of them. I don't like the color scheme is fine. I just don't like the look. But it's not because I hate Jordans. I just don't like the design of these. But it's cool. There's only 23 made. It's going off for auction. It's for a good cause. But I thought it just had an honorable mention because it's a biggie thing. In the
Yeah.
inside of the tongue, it's got some lyrics. And if you don't know, now you know. And then on the other one, it was all a
Well,
dream.
the
And
insoles
then
are dope because they got the red lumberjack. Well, we mentions that red lumberjack with the hat to match. So I think that's
with the hat
very
to match, yeah.
yeah. It's very thoughtful. And like you said, there's only 23 in the world. You don't need to worry about somebody buying you.
But here's what's interesting. I went onto the Sotheby's site to see, and so here's what the bids are. A size 7, current bid $5,000. Size 8, $6,500. $4,000, $5,500, 5,000, 5,000. So they're averaging around $5,000 for the shoes. The current bid.
It depends. It depends on if they can. It depends on you know, if you can get a tax write off. In the US, they've got very generous, very generous tax system for charitable contributions. So these numbers seem kind of low. When if you think about it, if you're a cafe or someone like that, especially if you're like a cafe that's working in that new emerging space, the green space, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
If you're
I
in
do.
that space and you are making an insane amount of profits and you want to kind of like bring your tax contribution down, you could invest this. You're technically paying it to a charity through Sotheby's. So assuming you get the tax credit or the transaction is registered as a charitable donation, actually wouldn't be a bad issue. You could offload 10, 20, $30,000 and then have these like marquee shoes in your store, which could drive traffic. So I don't know. I feel like from a business point of view that people haven't really got their head around this one yet.
Well,
I
what's
don't like the
interesting is
shoe, but
also like,
if I had one of these cafes or dispensaries, I would probably be looking at getting rid of a bit of cash.
yeah, I mean, look, it's a common way that it happens in any case, right? Through art auction houses. But what's interesting here is that that average number of around 5 to 6,000 is on the relatively smaller sizes, the 8s, 9s, 10s, and 11s. But when you hit 12s, it's 8,000, 10,000, 13 is 11,000 current bid in US dollars. So the larger sizes are being bidded for more. So, that probably gives you an idea of who the customer is. So anyway,
Oh,
thought it's an thought
the
it's an
price of the price of big feet.
the price of big feet, exactly. So yeah, so that's it. Okay, so let's move on to some content recommendations. I've
Yeah.
got one. So we've on the group chat, on our editorial group chat, and you and I have spoken about this as well, is Rick Rubin's on his little promo run at the moment as well, right?
Hmm.
Because he's got a book coming out, or is out already. Is that right? The Creative Act, Way of Being.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna check that out. No, Jess said he's gonna get the audiobook. I kind of agree with him. I might go that route as well.
Yeah, I probably will as well. I think it was released like last week. So he's obviously on his little press run and he's on a whole bunch of shows. But I chose to start listening to his interview with Andrew Huberman. Do you know who
Mm.
Andrew Huberman is? Yeah.
Yeah, very much so.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so for anyone that doesn't know, he's a neuroscientist, he's a tenured professor at Stanford University, like doing neurobiology and behavioral sciences and things like that. Now, I'm only about 30 minutes in. And the reason I chose this one is because Huberman, and I've only recently started listening to him on other people's podcasts. And I really like the way that he approaches science, anything to do with the brain, anything to do with the health, and the way he explains it. And he's very, very, very nerdy and very scientific, but he's very like clear in the way that he expresses himself through that. Because, you think a neurobiologist or a neuroscientist, it'd be all just be like gobbledygook and you don't understand it because it's really highbrow stuff. But he explains it in a very kind of manageable and accessible way. So I thought it would be a really good contrast to hear him from a nerdy scientific neuroscientist point of view, asking Rick Rubin, who's quite woo-woo and existential and, what will be type kind of vibe, about creativity, which you can't necessarily measure or define. So I thought that'd be a really interesting contrast. And it is. Now, Huberman's got a colorful past. He was like, he was a skateboarder, he used to get into fights, he was arrested, he was basically, his life was going off the tracks until he decided just to make a change and follow the path that he's on. So he understands kind of culture from the 80s and when Rick Rubin was like really kind of doing his thing. So it's a very interesting contrast between the two. So far, again, I'm only 30 minutes in, a couple of little gems have come out of it. But one thing I would observe is that Huberman's questioning is quite long. So he tends to like put a lot of like science first and then kind of ask a question, which I feel right now is giving Rick Rubin not enough to go in and really like give some good answers. But I feel like it's going to get better. It's a 3-hour episode, so I can only imagine it gets better. But I think there's a good one so far, and I'm going to stick it out. I'll probably listen to it over the next few days because it's long. But yeah, I don't want to listen to Rick Rubin on any old episode, any old podcast, because any other podcast is basically just an interviewer who's not going to ask questions in the perspective of Andrew Huberman. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting.
It's crazy that you say that because you said that he's on a little press run, but like I've never seen one new author who's in a press cycle hit as many multiple outlets at once. And what I learned from the Rich Roll one, which I didn't really enjoy too much, is that Rich Roll recorded his last summer. So the reason why we're seeing them all come out now is because he's probably been recording them over the last 6 months to a year. So with that being the case, it's like, well, you ask yourself, like, hang on a second, how's this guy in promo cycle? And he's managed to smash out all these interviews in the last, 6 weeks or 4 weeks. He's not. He's been doing it for a long, long time. A lot of these podcasters have been probably sitting on these interviews for quite some time, and now they're being released all at once. And so that leaves you in a bit of a curious situation because, you chose to find out about Rick through Andrew Huberman. I chose to not find out, we all know about him, but like you chose to consume his interviews and his insights around this book through Huberman. I chose Rick Roll. You felt like Andrew was a bit too long-winded with his questions and had too much of a biological bias. I felt like Rich Roll was more than long-winded. He was basically jumping in and freaking interrupting this guy. So I think the problem here is that you got to be very selective about who you consume your Rick Rubin interview off, because I think a lot of people are just trying to get their shit off in front of him. They're trying to show that they can go toe to toe with him. And what they are doing at that point is that they're signaling their insecurity and trying to make it more about them. And I can tell you that's a fact, because I used to do that. If you watch my first interviews with the people that I interviewed in Los Angeles when I started Love Soul TV, it was terrible, man. I kept jumping in every 10 seconds. Every reference that they made, I had to demonstrate to them that I knew that reference too. Totally messed up the chemistry of the interview. In fact, what I might do this week is I might actually do a reaction video of my original first. I might do a reaction video of me watching Collie Buddz, me interview Collie Buddz, and then just break that down on Instagram, because if it took me that much time to become comfortable around rappers and singers and people like that of that nature, imagine how much time it takes to get comfortable to interview a Rick Rubin. When I was preparing for Biggs, Jay-Z's partner, Kareem Biggs Burke, shout out to him. I wrote 15, 20 pages of notes just because of the proximity to Jay-Z and the whole fact that he was a partner and Rockefeller and all that, and how much respect I had for what he'd built and him. So, you got to be careful with it. You got to be super careful with it. Even Vayner World 2, like a lot of preparation to make sure that we had those great moments, but that can easily go wrong. In that preparation, it can easily go wrong. And I feel like you might have picked up on that with Andrew Huberman. I definitely picked up on it with Rich Roll. Maybe a recommendation is, if somebody does come out and they do a major promo run, just do samples. Go check out the first 20 minutes of every single person. If they've got a 2 to 3 hour podcast, then whoever you like, stick with. Whoever you don't, get rid, because you'll be able to commit that time into a better interviewer.
Well, I've had Rick Rubin's interviews before, and it's not like we don't know who he is. We know him extremely well, but I wanted a different perspective. I just wanted a different perspective because we listen to all of these podcasts, and actually this is the first episode of Andrew Huberman's podcast I've listened to, and I've gone in like kind of like big with Rick Rubin, but
huge,
and I think a big challenge that a lot of people will have with Rick Rubin, even if they are really established as interviewers, podcasters, celebrities, or in their chosen field, Rick Rubin is a very elusive kind of guy. Talking to him is like trying to like catch wind, like catch smoke. It's really like tricky because he's not a meanderer, but he doesn't always give full and detailed answers. Sometimes he's just like, yeah, I get it, but that's just the way it is. Maybe it's not supposed to be like that, and maybe it is. And you're like, come on, you're just trying to like grapple with it. Going, just give me something. He always will. So that's why I chose Huberman. I thought, maybe there's something else that he can take out of Rick Rubin from like a scientific point of view, or something a bit more tangible. Does that make sense? Remains to be seen. Now, I think, if I'm not mistaken, didn't David Letterman do one of his shows with Rick Rubin and David Letterman, right? That was good.
Which David Letterman? Good. We're talking Letterman post quote unquote retirement. Show. Okay, good.
Yeah, my next guest is he went to Rick Rubin's one of his studios or whatever, and they were in the studio in context. That was good.
Oh, I saw that. That was season 1. I saw that. It was during COVID.
There was no like kind of agenda with David Letterman. He was just kind of there as a fan and as probably one of the best interviewers to have ever done it. But that was cool because they were way more interactive and they were in the context of the studio, and that was a nice like little moment, and you can just see and hear Rick Rubin's kind of process. But now they're talking specifically about creativity, which is a subject that is a bit of an enigma in itself. So yeah, look, I'll give this one a go. I'll see it all the way through to the end, and if not, then I'll maybe move on to another one.
So. No problem. Okay, good. Well, that's we're not going to have as many content recommendations if we do 2 episodes a week, but mine super nerdy, really not for everybody, but if anybody who is an Apple fan or uses a MacBook, especially for anything where they're using a lot of video content like we do here, as you know, Apple have just released a new series of silicon M2 Max and M2 Pro, following on from the original M2 chip, and MKBHD has interviews on the M2 chip inside a MacBook Pro and the M2 Pro inside a Mac Mini. just high level, kind of like let the cat out the bag. The Mac Mini base model is with the M2 chip in is higher than the Mac Pro Tower. And that Mac Pro Tower, you can spend up to $55,000 on it. Of course, he's not comparing it to that one, but he's basically saying that of these two machines, this game-changing MacBook Tower, Mac Pro Tower, you can now get that in a device that looks like it could fit through your letterbox. But check him out. You can check out his Geekbench scores and all that kind of stuff. The M2 chip is incredible. I would love one, but just can't justify it, but would love one. All right, shout outs. Firstly, I'll jump in then. EYL, big shout out to them again for just making our week and really making us feel quite acknowledged, because it's our first kind of like crazy moment. So shout out to them and Fat Man Scoop for the introduction. Yesterday, I want to give a shout out to Sal. It was his birthday. We talked about him on the last episode. We went out yesterday for a nice meal with some friends. So shout out to everybody who came out there. And tomorrow, very dear friend of ours, massive supporter, very passionate supporter of ours, Cecilia Ronaldo, huge in the real estate game. We do work with her, but we can't say in what capacity just yet. But we will be talking about her projects in the coming weeks, because they're incredible, game changing. So big shout out to Cecilia, with the same age. So enjoy. And I want to give a shout out to everybody who sent a message in the last like 12 hours plus, who saw the clip, people that were in the comments tagging me in there. That was so nice, where EYL followers who also recognized me were tagging me in and showing love, and all the people that kind of sent me DMs and encouragement. Some people were like beyond proud, because it's weird, because it's not like you've graduated or anything, but there is kind of like a sense of pride, because people know what it means for a content creator when they go viral. You feel happy for them. It's almost like when somebody wins like a prize in their industry, if you get seen on one of these platforms. So a lot of people really know what that means to me and to us as a show. So thank you everybody for your kind words. I felt like I don't have a kid, but it kind of felt like having a newborn. You know what I mean? It's like that. It's like a moment type thing. So I guess when you have a video go viral. So shout out to everybody, man, who showed love. Yeah, really grateful for that. That's it means the world. What about you, Vic? Any shout outs this week?
Yeah, no, that's it. I mean, my only shout out is for Cecilia's birthday as well. Yeah, she's like you said, a big and passionate supporter. And technically speaking, so her birthday is on Thursday, the 26th of Jan. And technically speaking, it's just turned midnight. So we can officially say happy birthday, because she doesn't like being wished before her birthday, as she's told us. So officially today, because it is midnight, happy birthday, Cecilia. But that's it, man. That's the only shout I've got for this week.
All right, wicked. Well, good. I hope you enjoyed the show. Little midweek one. I know we achieved what we wanted to achieve, which is that we covered some great stories, had a great conversation, and we've come in at an hour and 19, which is about 20 to 25 minutes less than we normally would do. I don't know if this experiment's going to work out. We might end up with 2 long podcasts as opposed to 2 short podcasts, which was the goal. But anyway, a lot to discuss today, a lot going on as always. If you enjoyed this podcast, make sure you give us a 5-star rating on Apple along with a review, and a 5-star rating on Spotify would be super amazing. Really, the Spotify one means a lot for me, because I'm bullish on the platform long term. Likes, comments, thumbs up, all that kind of good stuff would be super appreciated wherever you see us, whether you're looking at a clip on Instagram or you're in our YouTube. And that's it. We're signing out for the week. We'll catch you again after we've managed to get through this weekend. I know I've got an incredible few days coming up, so I'll be talking about all that on Sunday. And we will see you next week. Bobby Viral Tino signing out. Peace.